Hey guys, Matt, IronTrap Garage, and we are working on the Sweetheart Roadster project again. So gaining some momentum, and I'm feeling good about some of the work we got done, and this is some of the fun stuff that we're getting into, at least for the time being. So what we're working on is, I mentioned last time we were going to work on getting this little dash rail section that we cut up fit into the car, and in between the last episode and this one, we've been kind of brainstorming how we were going to handle the dash rail section that we salvaged, and the gauge panel and all that stuff. So as we were looking at everything and kind of brainstorming, what I realized is the dashboard that we have is really rough in this crevice area down in here where the thing sat, and I think this was found in a junkyard by a buddy of mine. I think water sat in there and it got really pitted. So we were talking about how we were going to cut out that really bad pitting and replace the metal, and then we started just kind of talking about how we were going to fit stuff together. So we laid this dash rail over top of the dash, and it actually fits the shape pretty good down into over the edge. So that's number one. What I think we're going to do is cut the dash and weld this dash rail section that will flow into the cowl from the Model A into this old Chrysler dash, and that will blend it there. The other thing I decided was I was going to switch and change gears with the gauge panel. We had the old Stuart Warner Hollywood panel that you see here that I was going to fit to it, which was pretty cool, and I definitely liked it. But as time goes on, I get different parts, and you start just playing Legos and trying stuff. And I realized that this old Stuart Warner, well, I shouldn't say Stuart Warner, this old limo panel, as they call it, that has the old crescent needle gauges, actually looks really nice in this Chrysler dash with the way it all flows with the bottom edge. So what we're going to do is basically cut the shit out of this dash and make it work. So we're actually going to cut pretty much the whole center out of the dash and retain just this bottom edge here, because I like this raised bead, and then we're going to keep kind of this top edge here, and then we're going to make a new section that will fit in there, and we'll weld it up and just Frankenstein. It'll look cool. So we're going to work on getting first this dash rail section to fit the modified support rail that we did last time, and then we can work on fitting this to the dash and see where we get from there. All right, so I just sanded the face of the dash rail section just so I can get all the paint off, see what kind of mystery we were hiding behind. I was a little worried there was a bunch of body filler, but it was just spots where they actually filled the holes with body filler on this, which I found when we were taking it apart. But got these two in the flat section. It sits nice, clecoed in place, but you can see here in the ends, right about where we modified the dash rail support or the cowl support. Same problem on the dash rail. As you're coming down here, it starts pulling off. So what I'm going to do is on the front side make a mark, and we're going to put a little pie cut in it and pull it down much like we did the other section, and get this thing to fit tightly on the dash rail, or the dash rail support, and then we should be doing pretty good. So work on getting that done next. All right, we'll see where those two little baby cuts got us. Right about there. Okay, so that kind of pulled us down pretty far there. We didn't have to close a lot up. Here we pull that down, that lets it suck in pretty darn close. I think it's just the corners now that are hitting right here, which is hard to see on camera, but there's a little spot right here actually where the corner of the dash rail is hitting that we're going to kind of restyle. So that one little cut was probably all we needed to make. So I'm going to trim this edge away a little bit here on both sides for now. We'll probably remake that as we get further into the project, but for right now, trim it and bend it down. See on the other side. It actually lines us back up with the pre-existing marks we made on this from before we cut it all apart. So that works out nice. Okay, so we decided to switch gears. I know I was working with the old dash, and the more I looked at it, when we stood back in between the last little bit of filming, sometimes I'll just take a break overnight or for a day or two. I really decided after some soul searching that that other dash is just so rough for where I'm trying to get this car to. It's going to create a lot of additional work trying to save that dash, and it probably is better for me just to build something from scratch that uses the silhouette of that dash, but fits the car a little better with less welding and modification. And I don't have to cut like the whole entire center of the dash out, make a new piece, weld it in, finish it out, blah, blah, blah. At least with this, I could probably make it out of like 2 pieces of fresh metal, and when it's done, it'll require a lot less body work down the road. So like I say, I always try and think of future me, trying to get better at that. And future me would be cursing current me for not just making it new, because then we'd be doing all kinds of body filler and block sanding and extra finish work that just is kind of a pain. So that's the part of when you're doing a lot of your own work. It's like if you just drop it off at a body shop, you don't really hear the cursing. But if you're doing the block sanding and the body filler and the finish work, you're the guy you're cursing. So thinking of future me. So I got this little chipboard, not old, got this chipboard from Eastwood. This isn't, you can't find it on the website, you just snatched it out of a warehouse in their scrap cardboard bin, but this chipboard's nice. You find it a lot of times on the bottom of pallets. I know you can go to like Home Depot sometimes, and they have some hardware stores and different retail stores, they have it as well, but like anywhere that has like a big warehouse that they get shipments in, they use this a lot of time for like gallon containers or different chemicals where they don't want the can to tilt. At least that's for Eastwood, how it comes in. So it's basically cut to a pallet size. It's going to get thrown away anyway, so I save it out of the crusher and repurpose it for pattern stuff. In this instance, it's actually like just about the perfect width already to what we need for making this dashboard. So I'm going to start by just kind of shoving it down towards the bottom so we're not wasting too much of the material, because I'm going to probably end up making this dashboard out of a couple pieces. And I basically want to basically make my dashboard like out of this chipboard, and then that will help me kind of set it in place and get an idea if I like how it looks and I'm not making or wasting metal. So I'm going to start by just tracing the shape. And thank you to whoever sent us these Sharpies and the Home Depot pencils, because I'm already putting the stuff to use. We're going to be tracing this outside shape the shape or radius of the restyled or reshaped, whatever you want to call it, upper cowl brace that I've done. And we're going to cut this piece to that shape, and then we can work down off of that as we go. Jump over here. And the great thing with this stuff is you can just cut it with scissors or tin snips. And you're not wasting a bunch of metal. You don't have to work as hard. You can obviously use a pencil and erase. If you mess up, you can tape. You can even tape onto it. So now I can take this off, take some tin snips or scissors, cut this upper shape, and then we can kind of start building off of that from there. And then we can kind of just rough cut the bottom off. Once I lay the other dashboard on, we can just rough cut it, and I'll know we don't need this bottom huge section, and we can save that for the rest of the project. Alright, so I got the dash laid out, got a center line on my pattern here that we kind of rough cut. And one of the things I really liked about this dash was the bottom profile of the dash. I like the bead at the very bottom, but I also like just the way the dash kind of swept down. A little different than a 32 Ford dash, so it's kind of a neat look. And that was one of the things that really drew me to this dash, and I want to replicate that. And then we're going to keep the curve at the top how we drew it already. So I'm gonna, same kind of deal, just follow this. Now we have to remember that when we're making this sweep here, this is the bottom facing edge, but we still have to leave. A lot of times we'll write notes on this pattern. We need to leave an extra, whatever it is, inch or so for the flange to fold in on the dash. The dash was cut out of the vehicle in the junkyard short, so I got to just kind of use my imagination there. But what I'm really looking for is this sweeping shape here at the bottom. I like it, so that was one of the things I wanted to replicate and use for my inspiration for our dash. So I'm just going to trace along that line, but that should get our rough shape kind of going there, what we want. So, that's got our bottom profile that we're looking for. There's going to be a, here so you guys can see. That's hard to see with the pencil, but there we go. So it's got this spot, this sweeping shape here. I'm going to clean it up with a Sharpie once we get a little further along, or even use a piece of pinstriping tape to kind of make it naturally flow. But that's what we're looking for, so I can cut this bottom stuff out. I'm just going to mark and make a note till when I do this to add an extra like 1 inch to the inside. So when I'm making the dashboard, I can have that flange and we don't have to weld it on. So that's kind of the shape. That's what we're going to be going for. The hard part is there's a section that's like sunken in here, so we need to kind of work on that next. Alright, now that I got this bent, what I like to do, I kind of freeform the shape, but you know, I'm human, so when I was drawing this, it's not going to be perfect. So what I did is kind of stared at it and figured out which side I like better. from when I was tracing my line off the original dash. I think I like this side, so what I'm going to do is actually cut it in one section, all in one piece. I'm going to cut this lower shape here, and that's what we're going to be working off. So it's kind of an important thing to do, is that we want to mimic both sides to be symmetrical. This side I had a little bit higher of a arch when I was kind of just dragging my hand along with the Sharpie. So I'm going to go with this side, cut it out, and that will give me the shape that we're going to go to and work off of this bottom edge here for the whole bottom of the dash. You guys can kind of see a little bit of pencil there is throwing off the look of it, but that's what I'm going to do, is just trim that by hand, and then I'll get me a pretty symmetrical mirrored image. That's why I bent it in half there. Simple ways to do things. I like to use the throatless shear here, a Beverly style shear, because because the hand snips or hand shears, you can kind of wobble the panel a little bit easier, and you get bobbles in it, kind of like you would do with a when I'm drawing it with a marker. With having the longer blade here, kind of gets rid of those small little bobbles on the panel or in the line, and it makes, it just makes for a more even, smooth cut. And I'm treating this just like, kind of like metal and how I'm doing this. So this is just the way that works for me. Everybody has their own way. It's just what works for me. Doesn't mean it's right, doesn't mean it's wrong. But for a guy in his home shop, this little throatless shear works really well. Boom, there we go. So now, I like that. Got a nice shape to it, and we know when we open it up, it's gonna have basically the same shape to it, and you can see we're just off from our line on this side of the panel. So they were just slightly different, ever so slightly. The shape was a little different, so by doing that I kind of made it all symmetrical. What I'm going to do is just take a razor blade and just trim this little fuzzies off that were on the back side when cutting. Since we were doing double thick, it had a little bit of fold over, so that's no big deal. But that was just a quick way. Now I know in my head it's really darn close to symmetrical. And by just going off these lines, if I would have just cut them, that little bit of human error I knew was there, and this made it a little better. So now we can start figuring out how we're going to do the indent section. It's up top here. Figure out how we're going to make that. All right, so this is why I make the pattern and tape everything up, because you can kind of stand back and look, and see how everything's going to sit. I think the overall dash size, what I did was this is the overall size. We still have a section from here to here that's going to be indented throughout here, so that changes the look of it slightly. It makes this panel look bigger than it is, but I also dropped the panel down below this dash rail area, and it really makes the dash look big, like too big, I think. So what I need to do is kind of compromise and maybe bring it up a little bit. So there, about what we're looking at now. It's going to make the dash look a lot smaller once we put a bead in it and we have that sunken in section. It's going to make it look a lot smaller than it is. So it's kind of hard to picture, but I can kind of see it, and I think that's a good ending height for the dash. So now that I got that kind of established, we're going to use that top edge as my kind of way to keep putting it back and forth on. Alright, so I drew a line here that's basically where our dash rail is, and what I actually was thinking is that I'm going to actually set the dash in that inch and a half, I think it's 1.25 inches that the Model A dash rail, the face of it is. So I actually made that, marked that off, and I'm actually going to bend this in to create that setback look that we're going for, and then you can actually change the taper of it by how much we cut off of this edge here, because it's going to fit behind. Now it doesn't make sense, but so what I'm going to do is actually score the chipboard right along my line I drew. So just putting light pressure. Just gonna use the force and Put a light score in it. That's going to help us bend it on this radius a little easier. We'll be doing this eventually with a bead roller when it comes to the metal, and then it's going to take some adjustment with a shrinker stretcher. So when we go to bend this, I can kind of already see what, I'll be able to tell what's going to happen with the metal when we go to make it out of metal. And it's probably going to fight me because, well, like metal, it wants to stretch, needs to shrink or stretch to go around these curves, so it's going to probably bunch up on me. Maybe cut it. Might be able to just leave the waffles in it for now. Right in here, what's happening is as we're bending it, see there's a little waffle right there. It's coming in the panel, so that area is going to need to be shrunk eventually. As you can see, as you pull it over itself, it wants to overlap as we're bending this around this corner. So that's you can kind of make mental notes of where you're going to need to do stuff and where it's going to act up the most. But that's telling me if you're just starting to do some of this stuff and learning, like I was not that many years ago, kind of tells you what needs to happen so you don't have to get confused. Do I need to shrink? Do I need to stretch? The chipboard will kind of tell you what needs to happen. So right in here, got one. I'm going to cut almost down to where my bend line is. Got another one here. Go like that. And it's wavy all over the place. It's going to need a little bit of help, but right now we're just trying to get a pattern and make sure that we like the way it looks. I mean, you guys will see I spend just as much time on a pattern as making the actual part, because it's going to help us in the end make a nice piece. So bend this over. Alright, so little arts and crafts project here. This roughly find center. Alright. So that is cool. See? Way better already. Dig it. It's not sitting perfectly straight, but it gives us a good idea what we want it to look like. So what I'm going to do, like I mentioned, is we're going to basically trace out the outer perimeter to this. So this outside area here is going to be our cut line, but then we're also going to have a bend line down here, so I need to transfer all of that over. So the way I'm going to do that is probably trace this carefully, and then I can basically run a pair of calipers along that edge once we cut the metal, and that will give me a nice clean line for my bend line. So I'm going to just use some Sharpie here, and we're going to trace this outside cut line. And this will actually be what butts up against the original dash rail when I actually weld it together. This section will weld it at a 90-degree angle right onto the existing dash rail we have hanging in the car currently. The outside edges are actually too long, so I'm going to leave them long, because what I'm going to do is hang them behind the door jamb like I was doing with this paper pattern. And then what I can do is, once I get this all kind of laid out and sitting how I want, then what I could do is hang it behind the door jamb and basically scribe a line where the door jamb is, so it will basically, I want it to butt up against the door jamb so that we can basically weld in that corner. I want to give that like old school leaded in kind of look. We're just going to use a lot less lead and TIG weld and sand the welds to get a similar effect, just because that's what I'm better at. Oh boy. All right, so what I did was took some samples here, I put in the bead roller and trying to match what this bead at the bottom of this old Chrysler dash has. And I thought it was somewhere between 3/8 or a 1/2 inch bead. So I ended up just making some samples. This is something I do quite often. It's like just run it through the bead roller with some flat metal and test to see what you like, because you can't really undo it when it's done. So I like the 1/2 inch, ended up being the closest. So you guys see here. This is basically how we're gonna make this part. So we're gonna run a bead in the panel on a flat with this edge flat out, and then we're gonna fold the edge under, and that's what'll achieve this look that we have on this dash. That's how we can do it with the tools that we have. So I made a bead test panel, and then I bent it over in the vise just crudely to see if it works, but I like it. It's pretty close. The dash actually has a really deep draw. It's a 1/2 inch bead, but the draw is like really deep, and it's actually deeper than the bead dies I have, but I'm satisfied with that. I think it'll look pretty cool when it's done, and it'll be nice and pronounced. So that is what we're gonna do with that. So on our dash here, I have pretty much all our lines laid out. I have our flange line for the top laid out. I have a flange for flanging in towards the firewall, and now all I need to do is draw a line for our bead that's going to be our 1/2 inch bead. So since we're doing a 1/2 inch bead, we want to make a line. What I like to do is in the center of the bead. So if we want a 1/2 inch bead that's going to end right where this bend is, we need to go a 1/4 inch from this bend in, and that will be the center of our 1/2 inch bead. Now, how do you do that when you already have extra material hanging off the end for the flange? So we just add them together. So I have a 3/4 flange, and we want to go a 1/4 from that, so that's 1 inch. So this handy tool I've shown before in Tools That Don't Suck is this little preset scribe from Midwest. We'll drop a link to the Amazon where you can get it on Amazon below. But this tool has all these presets. If you guys have missed this Tools That Don't Suck, basically just has all these different measurements. So we need a 1 inch scribe off the edge. So we're going to use that 1 inch scribe. We'll follow along, and that will give me my bead line that we need to do, and we'll follow the shape. So I'm going to hook it over the edge for the 1 inch, like so. This will be pretty hard to see on camera, unfortunately. But you can follow a curve with this, which is nice. And I usually highlight it with Sharpie. I'll follow it by hand with Sharpie and highlight it so I can see the scribe a little better when we're actually rolling the bead. So now we have our, hard to see, but there's a little scribe here. So that is the panel that we have made for the dash. So now that I have that scribe, that's pretty much our bead line, and we are ready to go. I could start doing some fabrication metalwork next time. So yeah, so this is the dash. It's going to be for the, swing around so you can see, guys. So this is going to be the dash for Model A for the Sweetheart Roadster, and I'm pretty happy with how everything came out. So now next time I'm going to get cleaned up, get everything set up. So for the next video we're going to work on is actually making the dashboard and getting everything tack welded together. I wanted to show you guys more in depth the process I go through for like laying out patterns and all that stuff and figuring everything out, because a lot of times we skip over that in videos and we get a lot of emails and comments with people that are asking like, well, how'd you do that, or how'd you figure that out? So this is just a couple of the things I do to lay out a panel. Again, there's no right way, there's no real wrong way, as long as in the end it turns out looking how you want. There's going to be 1,000 different ways that different fabricators will do this that are much better than me. They may have better, smoother ways to do it, but this is just works for me when I'm building a dash or building parts for cars. This is kind of my simplified way to do it for my simple brain. So that's all I have for this one. Thank you guys for following along as always. We do videos on Tuesdays, Fridays, Sundays. If you haven't, definitely make sure you subscribe, because we're going to be doing a ton of updates on these projects as we roll through the summer. And I'm really excited that we're now rolling on the Sweetheart Roadster. We can start like just working our way back, making this thing cool. And I'm really excited to do some of this custom work, because this is the stuff I've been dreaming about for, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 years now. And now I'm finally able to get to it on this car, and I'm having a lot of fun. Thanks guys, catch you later.